Hey everyone. So Pedro is just getting something. He'll be right back.
I'm back.
Yes.
I'm back. Sorry.
Unbelievable.
Sorry. It was better at the beginning and at the middle of the presentation, right? So, as Diogo said, I'm an ex-Google. I worked in search quality and web spam team in Google between 2006 and 2011. It's been more time than I'm out of Google than I've been at Google. So before that, I was a designer, UX enthusiast, web designer, and developer. Between 2000 and 2006, I graduated in Portugal. I worked at a bunch of advertising agencies, some of them offline, some of them becoming digital at the time. So it was, I guess many people remember those days like Flash was dominating and so on. So if you want to know more about me, feel free to connect with me. That's my LinkedIn profile down there. And if we can go ahead with the slide, let's go ahead, yes. The usual and disclaimer that I like to put in all my presentations. Don't forget that what I'm about to present here, these are my perceptions. I don't speak for Google anymore. I've been out for longer than my tenure at Google. Google changes fast outside, but it changes faster on the inside. If you think that the internet moves fast, you should see inside how they break things and come up with new ideas. There are a lot of people at Google. So at Google, nobody knows everything. You work on a need-to-know basis of what your work entails. For example, I worked on the search quality team, but there are teams like the synonyms team, the anchors team, the crawling team. So nobody knows the whole. Everybody knows like pieces of in-depth. They have in-depth knowledge on their field, and then they gather together to discuss ideas and improve the whole thing together. Also, this presentation, these slides should not be interpreted without the context that they are being presented, which is me speaking here. So into the meat now. So usually when we talk about algorithms and penalties, people tend to conflate the two into the same bucket. And usually it's because they feel kind of the same. You receive a manual penalty or you are negatively affected by a Google algorithm and your traffic goes down. So what you see in your analytics tool kind of reflects, it's a down, I lost traffic, I lost positions. So people kind of conflate the two into the same, but they have different purposes. They are, although algorithms are a bit more ambiguous and you don't really know like what's affecting what, manual actions, which are penalties, they are a bit more explicit because you end up receiving a warning in your Search Console account. So that is always a dubious approach. Was I affected negatively by an algorithm update? But there is not so much doubt around if you're hit or not by a manual action, because you'll get it straight away. But before going into more in the difference between understanding algorithms and manual actions, we need to give a bit of a step back and understand what is quality, because understanding what is quality prepares us to look at algorithms and understand their purpose. And usually people ask me, what is quality? It's not star ratings. It's not like how many stars your app or your website has. Quality is something different for each one of us. And to understand this, usually I ask, when I used to run my own business, I would ask my clients, what is your website? And they would start to explain that their website is a store that sells stuff, or it's like a publishing magazine, and what I wanted to reach at is to make them realize that their website, each website is two things in one. It's a service by how the website is engineered to work, and it's a product because of the experience that users have on it. So one thing is how we design the search and categories and all our HTML, the technologies behind it. And the other thing is the experience that users have on our website. So it's both a service and a product. And when you detach service from product, you end up with something that is not complete, something that's not whole. And I have here in this slide, technical SEO focuses more on the service part, while strategic, I call it strategic SEO because it's not technical, it's more a product approach. Don't take, sometimes technical SEOs get offended because I kind of separate this and usually tell that technical SEO doesn't solve everything, but it's not my intention to take a jab at anything, but instead to kind of give you the whole perspective. So when you look at the two things together, technical SEO and the more strategic part of SEO, which is, I call it product quality, you achieve what I call the holistic approach to SEO. And because without a holistic approach, you kind of lose the part that creates value. Because SEO alone, it's unlike to create value if value doesn't exist. And this part is very important. If value doesn't exist, just throwing SEO at your site is not gonna make the value appear in there. If I sell a completely shitty product that nobody wants, doesn't matter how much SEO I throw at it or marketing I throw at it, it's not gonna stick. It's gonna go around there for the first couple of months, but then it's not gonna hold, and it's probably gonna disappear into the void. So, and this takes me to this approach. I don't know how many of you are acquainted with the Peter Morville's honeycomb of user experience. It's composed by a lot of areas, so to speak, that are not are necessarily only digital, but they transverse the physical and the digital world. And everything in here, it's something that has been a subject matter for even before the internet. Make something useful, make something desirable, make something credible, make something accessible, findable. And if we take findable to the digital world, it's nothing more than SEO. And make something useful. And all of this together creates value, which is in the center. And if you lack one of these things, you probably are out of the whole, kind of start to lose on the value. And actually, Google kind of tried to pass this into people that never studied these areas by publishing what they call EAT. I don't know if many of you are acquainted with EAT or EAT, which stands for expertise, trust, expertise, authority, and trust. And we can easily link each of those EAT items to an overlapping number of items in the user experience honeycomb. So, as I said, you need to focus on EAT, because EAT is what's going to kind of make you focus on the non-technical part and bring the value to your product. And this usually is how I illustrate when we work on the technical side of things, of SEO, and focus on HTML, server responses, redirects, titles and keywords, and everything in the technical part. And then we leave all the strategical part out, which is like, I didn't think about making my site credible. I didn't think about making my site desirable or useful. And then we leave out of the equation, and we have problems with algorithms, because algorithms are not a penalty. They are mathematical recipes that look to reward value when they see value. And obviously this leaves websites where they don't see value to lose on when an algorithm is operating. So algorithms look for quality, and quality is something that is different for everyone. Quality is not a static metric, it's a relative metric. And it's relative because it depends on your expectation. And your expectation is tied to your general culture of what you lived, where you live, the things that you buy, quality of products, range of products that you are used to get. And you have, by your surroundings, take you to a level of expectation, which is different to everyone. So you see how quality is different, and why Google adjusts quality based on user input. Hence, they have the quality rater guidelines, and they look for people behavior when they interact with websites in the search results. So algorithms look for quality. Google does an insane amount of quality tests. Like, they run, I guess probably by this time they must run about 500,000 tests per year. And they do like constant side-by-side blind experiments, live traffic, and just these are the numbers for 2019, I believe. Just in 2019, they did like 3,000 and almost 700 launches in terms of algorithms and infrastructure improvements. So Google is always running after their users. They want to understand their users, because if they understand their users, if they present better results, if their users are happy, they keep using Google. They don't leave to another search engine. So if SEOs, instead of chasing Google, if they would chase users, they would be on par of where their Google is going. And this recurring thing of always making improvements to search comes after the need that we as site owners have of making also constant improvements to our products and our websites. Because quality is not only different for everyone, quality degrades with time. So if you have like a shiny new product that is like a innovation now, in 10 years it's not going to continue being an innovation. Like the iPhone, when it came out in 2007, was a market, everyone knows that it blew everyone out of the water, because nobody was ready. They came with this product that was revolutionary with a touch screen, but nowadays is like they keep, it's not a revolutionary thing anymore having a touch screen on a phone. So if you launch a phone nowadays with a touchscreen and you expect the same impact that Apple had with the iPhone in 2007, it's probably not going to happen. So people need to improve their products in order to remain competitive, in order to remain innovative, and Google catches after this with their algorithm improvements. And so this is where algorithms kind of start to branch out from and differentiate from penalties, because the main difference between algorithms and I call it algorithmic issues, so to speak, because when you don't perform well after an algorithm update, you obviously have an issue to solve. So algorithms, they act more like filters, where they focus on surfacing quality instead of penalizing a behavior, while penalties focus on a determined behavior that managed to be rewarded unfairly by algorithms. And quality algorithms are all, without exceptions, they are all applied at serving time, meaning that no rescoring happens before you press enter on a search. There is no, all websites and all websites are rescored at serving time. So, and this makes algorithms pretty scalable because they are dynamic and they influence and they act on what they are supposed to act, as long as this behavior that they want to find remains true. So as opposed to manual actions are static and they apply to a certain area with a certain behavior, and they only change if there's another manual intervention. So, and both algorithms and manual actions are granular by default, meaning that there's no algorithm that acts at the whole domain level. They start to surface signals at the page level, at the URL level, and they can rescore everything to the host name level. So they act granularly by default. As I was saying, algorithms are dynamic. As long as a behavior is true, they are there. They have upper and lower thresholds, means that as long as you are above or below a threshold, you can be impacted by or not impacted by an algorithm. For example, some things that algorithms look at link velocity, SERP growth, etc. Their action and intensity can be different according to the vertical that a website is in. For example, news websites are prone to be impacted by kinds of algorithms that e-commerce websites aren't, or informative websites aren't. And this is neatly in parallel with search intent. I don't know if all of you are acquainted with the different search intents that users have. In Google, it's like either navigational, they want to find something, a website, they know the address. For example, if I type Facebook, it's a navigational query because I want to go to Facebook. If I type speed of light, it's an informational query because I want an information about what is the speed of light. I don't want to buy a speed of light, and I don't want to navigate, although it would be really nice to navigate at the speed of light, but I can't. If I type like cheap Canon M50, probably I want to buy because I included cheap in my query. So I'm price sensitive, and so forth. So there are many intentions, and each intention varies in type of search results and the content that search results have. And so algorithms operate with different intensities, and there are different algorithms for different verticals. And algorithms are all constantly improved based on user input, meaning there's always a rescoring happening. They evolve. It's like a recipe that you are always improving to make your food tastier. And they react to aggregate user behavior, meaning that it's not one user that suddenly bounced back to search results on my website and it's going to impact the whole thing. No, it has to be a consistent and aggregate behavior. It has to be mathematically and statistically representative. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair or make sense. Also, algorithms can work together. They don't work isolated. They can be combined with each other. They can be combined with manual actions, not only amongst them, but also with, it's common sometimes that an algorithm is rewarding a website or not rewarding a website, and a manual action is imposed to counteract something else on that website. So penalties, algorithms, they can work together among them. Not all fluctuations that you see are penalties, and not all penalties are visible. For example, I could apply in my days a penalty to a website that would prevent it from passing PageRank to other websites. So meaning that any links that site points out, it's the same as not pointing any links out. I would just cut the PageRank flow from that website, and you would not receive a message or a warning for this. It's just something that could be done. You could cut the PageRank flow out of a website. And this is it's not something that you look at your analytics or your Search Console and you're going to notice anything, because it's not going to have any impact on your traffic. So quality issues arise when your page doesn't fully meet user expectations. For example, when you promise something on your page and you fall short of what users expected. When your site or page doesn't fully meet the intent that the user had. If you have a page about cheap Canon M50, and then I go there and just a bunch of text with kind of affiliate links and nowhere to buy. It's more information oriented than transaction oriented, probably you're going to have a problem. If your site is perceived as below average or frustrating, like you have a lot of ads or you're very slow loading, this is sometimes algorithms kind of will not reward you on that. If your value proposition isn't strong enough, and this starts to enter more into the product, more into the strategic side of things, because nowadays it's not enough to just have another website. You need to be different. If your value proposition is not understood or is not strong enough, users will not have a reason to prefer your site. And that means that your site can disappear and no one will notice. And that's a reason for algorithms not rewarding you so well, because you don't have anything extra to bring to the table. And just because you wrote with different keywords doesn't necessarily make something different. You need to provide significant value, extra value, and value proposition. We are not in the web 2.0 anymore. We are not in the year 2000 when the dot-com boom. So having a website is not a differentiation anymore. How do we deal with algorithmic issues? You need to look at your website as if you are not the owner and realize what you're falling short on. What problems are you failing to solve? Is what you are delivering really what your users want? Oh, I have content. I wrote a lot of words. My articles are all above 7,000 keywords. Well, is that the format that your users want the content in? You are writing a lot of keywords, but probably your users want a video, or they want some graphics along with your content, or they want your content neatly broken in chunks so that it's easily consumed, because nobody has patience to enter a website and see 3 scrolls of text that they have to read through. Make your content easy to consume in bits. Make sure that all your pages have a purpose beyond for SEO. Your pages must exist for a reason, and they must exist beyond the reason, oh, it's for SEO. Add real value, meaning different wording is not enough, as I said. And especially if you are starting and if you are, like, for example, common is an affiliate niche, avoid aggressive content monetization, especially if you are selling or monetizing something that you don't produce, that is not yours. Start small. Don't start very aggressive. And then ask yourself this question: what would your users miss the most if your site disappeared today? So you have your site, you have your users. If your site disappears today, like suddenly by magic, it's no more in Google, what would your users miss the most that they would not find in the next search result, in your competitors? And you need to work towards this. So now that we understood a bit about quality, value proposition, and how algorithms kind of look at this, we enter into the realm of manual actions. So manual actions are a bit different from algorithms because not only they are more static, they are applied according to behavior. So there are a huge variety of things that you can apply as manually on a website to prevent something. And not all manual actions demote a website, not all manual actions remove a website. There are a lot of manual actions that do a lot of stuff which because of NDA, I cannot open much about it, because then I would kind of set myself with a problem. They all are more static. They have an expiration date, which is very long. You don't want to wait out for a manual action to expire, because you don't, believe me. They can be more or less granular depending on the intent or the behavior. So if you are someone that is constantly trying something and being sneaky, you are going to be confronted with a different level of breadth and aggressiveness of a manual action than a user that never did this before. Reconsideration, when a manual action is awarded, a reconsideration request is required to update it or to remove it. But the good part is that Google doesn't hold grudges. So meaning, once you're done with it, you've solved everything, Google doesn't hold you back on anything just because you had the manual action. Some types of non-manual actions, there are several types that span around different types of behavior. linking behavior, unnatural links from and to your website. Content behavior are like when websites generate pure spam, when they have keyword stuffing, thin content. I can then explain each one of these a bit more in detail if anyone has doubts and never heard about them. There are manual actions for user-generated spam, free host, cloaking, and then other manual actions aimed at mobile stuff, like redirection on mobile redirects that sometimes are sneaky, and hacked content. Hacked content is usually something that is deemed a bit more light because it's usually not because the webmaster or the website owner did something on purpose to be sneaky, just because something out of his control happened. So what triggers a manual action? A manual action is triggered by several systems. There are monitoring systems in place, which can be triggered, can be sourced from algorithms. So if an algorithm is unsure about rewarding a website on something, it will flag a website to be reviewed by a rater or a search quality analyst. There are industry trends that can be observed by Google employees that everyone does what it's called like market patrol on their own language market, where they kind of identify what are the most egregious and most recurring manipulative behaviors in specific language market, and they share it with others. And then there are spam reports that everyone knows, like reporting a website that is not behaving well. And all of this, it comes down to manipulative intent, because for a manual action to be implemented and to be awarded, there needs to be manipulative intent. So Google algorithms vs manual actions side to side here. While algorithms aim at resurfacing value, manual actions aim at penalizing a behavior. Algorithms work at scale. Manual actions tackle specific scenarios. Algorithms are dynamic. Manual actions are static. Algorithms are fully automated. Manual actions are manual, but they can also be semi-automated. I have the ability to detect a behavior and run it and pipe it through an automated system that says, while this behavior remains on this website, the manual action will will not expire. Algorithms have an undefined duration, meaning that they are there while the behavior is true. Manual actions have a defined duration, which is expiration date. Then manual actions are not applied on a whim or lightly. Nobody at Google likes or thrives on applying manual actions to websites. Nobody has anything against anyone. It's just their job to counteract behavior. So before applying a manual action, an analyst needs to consider a few things. Among them, does this behavior, what I'm seeing, have a manipulative intent? Oh, this website has one keyword hidden. Does it have a manipulative intent with that one keyword hidden? Probably not. It has like 3 keywords hidden. Probably not. It has like 500 keywords hidden. Well, let's talk. So is the behavior egregious enough? Like, are the keywords hidden commercial, or are the keywords hidden like supposed to be menu items that have some error there? Like, will the manual action yield any impact? Meaning, oh, I'm going to apply this demotion to a website that cannot be more demoted because algorithms are not rewarding it anymore. So it does make sense to apply a redundant manual action on something that is already working that way. That's why sometimes people complain, I reported this website for spam and nothing happened. Well, what you are seeing is not the result of the manipulative behavior, which has already been tackled. It's the result of other things that you are not seeing. And then think about what changes will this impact yield? Like, I'm going to penalize this website. It's going to drop out of its position. What comes after? Is it worse or is it better? Am I going to penalize the website that's the best, although it's being manipulative because everything else is already penalized, for example? And then what am I penalizing? Is it a widespread behavior or is it like a one-off thing? If it's a one-off thing, it's more likely that it's going to be awarded a manual action. If it's a widespread behavior, most likely we will want to tackle it algorithmically. So things can be escalated, and then we can train algorithms to tackle a specific widespread behavior. Dealing with manual actions, then things you need to understand in order to deal with them. So you need to understand the issue that caused the manual action. Sometimes while I was at Google, I saw people sending reconsideration requests and not addressing the manual action, the issue that caused the manual action. So they were just like shooting everywhere and not really understanding what caused the manual action. So read the guidelines. Then don't rush. You want to be thorough rather than fast. You want to take a deep breath, see everything before you start shooting manual actions. It's just gonna be a more delayed process if you start shooting manual actions which are not aimed or do not address the problem at hand. So don't submit multiple reconsideration requests or avoid to do so. Don't submit an empty website. For example, many webmasters receive this kind of pure spam manual action which removes their website from search, or they bought this domain that was penalized and they realize there's a manual action on it. And before they start to do anything, they want the manual action to be lifted. In these cases, you need to show intention. You need to show good intention. You need to show value. You need to show that you are willing to commit to that website before you can send the reconsideration request for a manual action to be lifted. And then again, this is also common, even if the issue is specific to a section of your site, make sure that you fix everything site-wide. For example, this was seen in websites that were like affiliates. They would have different areas of the website that were thin affiliation without much value, and Google would kind of penalize them for thin content, thin affiliation. They would work on one part of the website and not address the other. And the same goes for selling links. For example, websites that sold links, Google would give an examples of the links that they found, and then the webmaster would not address the rest of the links that, although those were not given as example, Google knows that they were there. So again, fix everything. Just don't be only bound to what Google gives you as an example. Again, be succinct and direct. Like, don't make a whole essay of the reconsideration requests. Don't send a link to a Google Docs where you explain 3 Bibles of why you did what you did and you're going to be out of business. Nobody wants to read that. Nobody will read that. Avoid being a repeat offender. Like, if you were penalized and the manual action was lifted, don't do the same thing again. Or maybe you can do it again, but definitely after a while, you're just not going to fly. Then state that you intend to follow Google's search quality guidelines from now on, and it's gonna be good. What does not trigger penalties or algorithmic issues? So some misconceptions and some myth busting here. We are reaching the final slides. So duplicate content, it doesn't trigger neither algorithmic issues, neither a manual action. Having URLs at 404 doesn't trigger manual actions, doesn't trigger algorithmic issues. Hosting a website in shared servers does not trigger manual actions or algorithmic issues. Having links from websites that are not in your niche, unless you did something for those links to appear, and I say something like you went to, I want to get links. There's nothing that can trigger a manual action or algorithmic issue on your site. Having broken internal links or links pointing to external websites that are broken, also not an issue. High bounce rate. Bounce rate is not considered. Not all websites use Google Analytics. Some websites don't even have analytics. It's impossible for Google to know the bounce rate of all websites. So these are only a few. Recovering from manual actions. In some cases, rankings might return, for example, in cases that your site was hacked and you were not doing anything to inflate your rankings. But for example, if you were inflating your rankings with a behavior and were penalized, and then you removed what inflated your rankings and the manual action was removed, of course, there's nothing to recover from because there's no traffic to be regained because you removed what was inflating your rankings. And then takeaways. This is not the last, but the one before the last. Rethink your value proposition, competitive advantage. Like, don't just have a website because yes, or because, oh, I have these keywords in this domain and I want to have something. Think beyond that. Treat your website as a product and innovate constantly. Don't just sit there. Research your users. Your users' needs, true user experience. Like, don't wait for Google to kind of think that your site is subpar. Ask your users, what would you like to see on my website? Is my website enough? Or is what you would like me to have on my website that you didn't find? Talk to your users and ask their opinions. And then technical SEO matters, but alone it will not solve anything. Your website needs to have value, and you need to work on that. Chase after your users and not algorithms. Read search quality guidelines, and consider the risk of violating them. I say consider the risk because if you are in a niche like, oh, my business is super aggressive, it's only going to last 1 month, and then I don't care about it anymore. Well, have at it. Do all the black hat that you want to do, and expect the consequences of it, obviously. But my point is, be aware of the consequences. Just don't do it because you want to be sneaky or your client doesn't know what you're doing. Then remember, it's easier to get in than it's to get out, meaning that you are more likely to manage to get a link onto a website than to remove it. And then that's it. That's where we end. Thank you. Obrigado. Beep, beep.
Uau. Muito obrigado, Pedro.
That's where we end.
Muito